to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and one of the topics that's a hot button for me personally is the American farmer, agriculture in general. There's a lot of reasons for that, and if you listen to any lengthy time, you know some of my feelings about it. And we're so glad when we got to meet before, and now I'm delighted to have back Brian Reisinger. He is the author of Land Rich, Cash Poor, My Family's Hope and Untold Story of the Disappearing American Farmer. He himself grew up on a family farm in Wisconsin and lives to tell the hidden stories of rural America. A columnist and consultant, he has been published by USA Today, Newsweek, The Hill, and others, and has won several awards for his writings. He does have a website, brian-reisinger.com, and there is a picture of the landing page and a picture of the cover of the book. Brian, good to see you again, friend. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, Perry. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
You know, even this morning, we had a story about the issue in Missouri that won the $24 billion suit against China. China wasn't even in the class or in the courtroom, and they have no intention of paying it. But it looks like they can seize their property in Missouri, which includes farmland, which is kind of interesting. So I have a lot to talk to you about. The big stories are tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China. What's your take on the impact on the American farmer?
Well, I'll tell you, and I know you know this well, farmers are often caught between issues. And so farmers want us to get tougher on trade. And so in some ways, they appreciate a tougher stance, and they know that can deal with historical issues that have held prices down and led to unfair trade standards for a long time. At the same time, we have to be careful about foreign retaliation impacting our farmers. And what we're going through right now is farmers want us to negotiate tougher. They also have to deal with the fact that when we put tariffs on things, Canada and Mexico will also put tariffs on those things. That makes it more expensive and harder for farmers to sell their goods abroad. And then we also have the issue of fertilizer that is imported from Canada that will become more expensive because of tariffs. Now, here's the thing. The Trump administration has been hearing these concerns and has been making some adjustments. So they've made a delay in those tariffs to let negotiations with Canada and Mexico continue. We can hope those are fruitful negotiations. And they're going to, it looks like, have a carve out for a key fertilizer component that won't have tariffs on it. So they're trying to be tough, and we're also seeing how challenging that can be without having an impact on the farmer that is in such a fragile economic situation in this country. Okay.
So to that point, there's a pause to negotiate. Isn't the end goal to be equal in tariffs? Whatever Canada is charging us, we would charge them. Isn't that the end goal?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And what you're talking about is why so many farmers do support getting tougher on trade. I mean, it gets even worse when you get out to China and some of those foreign adversaries, you know, but there are so many examples across the globe where America does not hold other countries to the same standards those countries hold us to. Asparagus farmers in Michigan, right next door to where I grew up in Wisconsin, they are not able to sell their asparagus into other countries year-round because those countries protect their prime asparagus seasons. But asparagus farmers in Michigan, they face competition for foreign asparagus all year-round. We ought to have a fair, level playing field. That's all the American farmer needs, to your exact point.
How influential or damaging has it become for China to be involved in American agriculture?
You know, that is one of the single most damaging, challenging elements of this. And there's a couple ways, but one of them is the ways that China has come in and really made the American farmer captive, especially during the Great Recession and years afterward. China came in and really started buying a lot of American agriculture products. That was good for a time in a certain way. It's good to sell to other countries our excess products after we'd fed our own country. But China scooped up so much of it, they became kind of a hostage situation where they had to hold on to that, and then they were able to dump things and push their buying down, and that affects the price. So when the American farmer is upset with China, just like the American worker is, it's justified because China has been doing things to push prices down, and that's in addition to currency manipulation. That's in addition to buying up American farmland, including their military installations. So from the price to the security of our food to the security of our country, China is one of the biggest problems that we have for the American farmer and the American people right now.
When I read the case over the weekend, Brian, where Missouri won this judgment against China, and the only thing they could do is to seize the property, I thought, man, this is a great open door for every state in the union that has China buying agricultural land. I don't know if the liberal states will do it, but man, what an opportunity to get it back.
Well, you're absolutely right. And, so many people out there just wonder, how can you strike a blow against China? What can you do about what they're doing given their massive economic power across the globe? And the reality is that you're absolutely right. States can take action to make sure that they're dealing with a presence in their state already. They can also take action to prevent, the presence of China and other foreign adversaries from getting their hands on American farmland, in addition to things we can do federally. So there's a real opportunity. And to your point, on states that are, to the right or the left, red, blue states, look, here's the reality. Regardless of politics, it's in our interest to make sure that we get a handle on this, because whatever you think of geopolitical situations in different countries, the reality is that it is crucial that America keep control of its American farmland. It ought to be owned by American farmers growing American food to be sold here and abroad, not controlled by other foreign countries, particularly foreign adversaries. That's something we ought to all be able to agree on, regardless of politics, one would hope.
Yeah. I think I asked you this question before, and I want to ask it again only because I want our viewers and listeners to understand this. And that is, from your perspective, Brian, describe the difference between big ag and the American farmer.
Yeah. It's such an important question that you're talking about. Here's the reality. The American farmer is that hard-working family that owns and operates their own farm. And there are farms of various sizes that do that. But here's the reality. We've got nearly 2 million farms left after losing 70% of our farms. And so we've still got many left, but a lot have been wiped out. And 88% of them are small family farms. And so when people think about, big ag and where our food comes from, it's true that a lot of our food comes from different places. But the reality is we have so many farm families that could provide our food supply here domestically and abroad if we only make it so that things can work a little better, a little more fair, and the American farmer of all sizes can compete.
It sounds like the American farmer may have, or a coalition of the American farmer may have the president's ear in the fact that he's willing to pull back some of these tariffs into renegotiation, or am I just assuming something?
It's a really good question. I think that what we are seeing is a situation unfolding where there are efforts to take stronger action on behalf of the American farmer worker, and where we're seeing some maybe unintended consequences or things that are happening because other actors then react to us. And we are seeing so far that the administration is seeing those things and trying to address them. And so what I would say is, farm country and rural America was some of the strongest support that President Trump had. And I think that so far, when folks from rural America and folks from farm country are speaking up, we are seeing that they are working to adjust their policies. I hope that continues. And as you know, there's a lot of reason for the American farmer to be concerned, whoever is running the government, because the establishment of the Republican Party, as well as the Democrats, have made so many policy mistakes for decades and decades. And so I think it is a good thing for the American farmer to have a bigger voice right now. And it's more important than ever that we do, because we are at a point where if we lose more farms, we're going to lose most of our family farms in the next generation, just mathematically speaking. And we're dealing with so many big issues right now that are impacting that. So it's good for the farmer to have a larger voice, and I hope that continues.
Yeah. The other issue to me that is so interesting is water. And the reason I bring this up is personal experience in this to some degree, not huge, but enough to know what we're talking about. And that is who controls the water, who owns the water, and how much does water cost? This is also an element in farming that may be out of the American farmer's control, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And here's the challenge that we have. Water is one of the biggest fights, and it is both something that people need to be able to grow our food and to be able to pursue other types of farm, private enterprise, small businesses. And at the same time, it's a collective resource around which there's a lot of disagreement. And the thing that really gets me the most is, the farmer and people who care about our environment, whether they're on the right or left or whatever, ought to be able to work together. As you know, nobody cares more about the health of our land and the cleanliness of our water and the abundance of our water than the American farmer, because they need that to be able to pursue their livelihood, and they live close to land. They care about our resources. We ought to be able to work together on those issues more, but so often it's a divisive issue around environmental issues or whatever the case may be, when we could be cooperating to both help move our food supply and other industry forward and have a clean water supply. I think we share that interest.
Do you have any feel yet, Brian, what RFK Jr. impact may have on the American farmer?
Yeah, he reflects a very strong movement in this country from, people of various political perspectives who care about where their food comes from. And so the aspect of what he's talking about that can lead to more people buying their food from local and regional food sources and specialty food markets where we can get healthier food, that is something that is a real opportunity for the American farmer. And the thing that we need to make sure of is that government doesn't do what government has so often done in the past. And I'm not saying that's necessarily going to be the case this time, but we always have to be on guard for it, which is that government tries to force changes in ways that don't make sense for the market, don't make sense for the little guy, for the small business owner. So farms are small businesses. And in order to experiment with new crops and shift away from some of those traditional crops and broken markets they've been trapped into and move into more markets around fresh, local, and specialty food, they need to be able to have the time to make those changes. And so I think there's a lot of discussion about how do you implement this. And I think it's good to be having those discussions because a farmer's got to be able to take that little bit of money he might have left over at the end of the year, if he has any left over, and decide what crop to risk it on and what crop to take a chance on in the hopes there's going to be a market for it. So we need to capitalize on this moment where there's more people than ever who care about where the food comes from. We need more market demand, and we need government to make sure that they let small businesses make that transition in a natural way.
Will these new policies have an impact on GMOs?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's going to impact a wide range of the ways that we use science and chemicals around our food. And some science has helped us advance as mankind. Some science has helped us do some pretty strange things that maybe strain, the land or strain what the American people are willing or should put up with from a health standpoint. So I think it is going to impact those things. Remember when I was a kid growing up on a farm in southern Wisconsin, the whole thing was being bovine growth hormone free, BGH free. And American farmers always ready to pivot and make sure that they are meeting the needs of what the American consumer wants. And the American farmers always wanting to do what they can to move our food supply in a good direction. We need market demand, and we need to make sure that government policy is designed the right way.
How would you describe, Brian, from your experience and research, is the bee health in America?
Well, that's amazing you ask about that because that's such a foundational thing. And we actually have bees on our farm, and that's something we introduced a few years ago. It helps the crops in addition to producing raw local honey. And that is such an important thing that it would be so easily overlooked. All of American agriculture is so easily overlooked, but bees are so crucial. And look, bee health, there are different diseases that have been spreading from one hive to another. There are real challenges on top of the fact that you can be a beekeeper if you live in a winter state that has a hard winter. You can lose half or more of your hives even if you're doing everything right. And so we have to really pay more attention to that issue because I think it's so easily overlooked. There just isn't enough buzz about bees, I guess, if you'll forgive the pun.
That was my first 4-H project, and I learned the hard way, and I learned to appreciate it. I never forgot it. And my first 20 hives, I had to dig a hole, put them in there, and burn them.
It is an incredible line of work. It's such a delicate type of work. Yeah. I really do it. And I've got the chance to work with my dad on our bees, and boy, it's hard work, it's delicate work, and it's so important to honestly, to just the health of our natural resources and our food supply, really.
Quickly, what do you want people to get from your book?
I hope what people take away from it is hope. We talk about the despairing American farmer. There's a lot of bad economic forces on wiping out farmers for a century, a lot of really challenging things, but we also tell our family story along the way from the Great Depression today and all the survival stories of economic upheaval and farm accidents and weather that blesses and threatens. I hope people take away resilience because although we've lost 70% of our farms, we've got nearly 2 million left. Most of them are still small family operations like the one I grew up on. And I hope people see these stories and they see what the American farmer is made of and see that something that is worth continuing to fight for.
It's called Land Rich, Cash Poor. There's a picture of the cover of the book there by Brian Reisinger, and you may want to get a copy of this. I tell you what, if you enjoy eating, you want to read this book. Brian, you're a blessing, and you are a ray of hope. So let's stay connected, friend, and let's see how this progresses down the road, okay?
Thank you. I appreciate all you do to highlight issues.
All right, see you.